All right, so I want to give you guys some of my disturbing and strange experiences in the Catholic Church. I did a video about some of my disturbing experiences in the Catholic Church just a number of days ago, and not surprisingly, a bunch of people were upset with me. I was called a liar. I was told that I am bringing confusion. I am putting confusion and doubt into people's minds. I was told that I went through a stumbling block and that I am somehow losing my faith. I was told these things. And do you know really what this kind of response is? It's called blaming the victim. That's what that is. People who are upset with me for doing the video that I did, and for those of you who did not see the video, I will put a link in the description for you to see. But those who are upset with me for doing that video, you guys are blaming the victim. And you are acting like cult members. You're acting like members of a cult. That's what you guys are doing. Because people who are cult members will get mad at those who recount their terrible experiences with the cult or the religious movement or the religious circle or sect or whatever. People will recount the details of the abuse they went through in a cult, or they will recount how they were the prey of a religious person or a religious leader who was really just a predator. And the members of the cult will attack the victim. So you guys who are upset with me, you guys are acting like cult members. So with that said, I want to give you guys some more stories. I want to tell you guys some more of my strange and disturbing experiences in the Catholic Church. Everything that I am about to tell you guys is true. And in order to avoid any sort of possible legal issues, I am going to not give you any of the real names of the people that I am going to describe in these stories. I'm going to give them fake names. And this is just to avoid any sort of legal issues, possible legal issues. I was a little bit hesitant to do this video. I've been thinking about it for these last few days, whether or not I should even do this video, because I know I'm going to get a negative response. And when you know you are going to get a negative response for something that you really want to say, you feel a little bit hesitant. It's kind of a normal human response. So for these last few days, I was thinking about it. Should I do this? Should I not do this? And I decided today to do this because I really want to show you guys how bad things really are in the Catholic Church. It's really bad. It's nasty. So let's get right to it. In the year 2013, I was confirmed into the Catholic Church. And I met a priest. Let's just call him Father Mark. Father Mark was a very educated priest. He was a canon law judge appointed from the Vatican itself. He was a very learned man, someone who a new convert to Catholicism would want to talk to. He spoke Latin. He was very learned in the things of theology and in the things of Catholic teachings and moral law. Father Mark was very polite. Not someone that you would ever suspect of being evil. And so anytime I was in the church where he was operating in, we would talk. We would have conversations about Catholic theology, history, church history, and we would talk about church controversy. Now, this guy was not someone who presented himself as a Novus Ordo priest. He was not someone who presented himself as a modernly thinking priest. He was someone who presented himself as a traditionalist Catholic priest. He was someone who supported the traditional Latin Mass, and he had criticism against the modern Catholic Church, or for a lot of the things within the modern day Catholic Church. So again, someone who is a new convert to Catholicism would want to talk to this sort of priest. So we would invite Father Mark to our home for dinner, and we would have discussions on theology and church history and all these things, and we would talk for hours. Again, he was a priest who a new convert to Catholicism, or any sort of Catholic who was serious about his faith, would want us to speak to. He was that kind of a guy. And we were discussing going to Rome, because Father Mark every year would go to Italy, and he would travel around Italy. He had a lot of friends who were priests and who were lay people, and he talked to me about the possibility of going to Rome, where he would introduce me to fellow Catholics and priests, and have a great time fellowshipping with other Catholics in Italy. And going to Italy with someone who had a lot of connections to people would make for a great Catholic experience. So during dinner, Father Mark tells me, Theodore, I know a nice Catholic family in Italy, and they have a beautiful daughter. She's a Catholic girl, young Catholic lady, and I would love to introduce you to her, and I would love to introduce you to her family, and maybe you can start a relationship with this woman. So at that time, I was 23 years old, young guy, wanting to look for a Catholic wife. To me, it sounded like a great idea. Why not? So I said, sure, I would love to be introduced to this young woman and her family. It would be great. So we finish dinner, we have a nice long conversation, and he leaves. So about 15 minutes later, 15 minutes after he leaves, longer than that, maybe an hour or so, I get an email from Father Mark, and he says, Theodore, I want to introduce you to this young lady and her family. So could you give me a photograph of your face so I can show the family and this girl how you look, right, to see if she's interested? And can you give me your age? Okay, fine. No harm done. Why not? What do I have to lose? So I respond back to him and I say, well, here's a photo. I gave him a photo of my face, obviously. And I said, I am 23 years old. So, that was it. So about maybe a few weeks or a month or so later, I go to the church where Father Mark is working at, and I attend Mass, and a friend of mine is there. Let's just call him Bob. So my friend Bob, after Mass, meets up with Father Mark, and there's me and there's Bob and there's Father Mark, and we're talking. And our plan was, after church, I would go to Bob's house and we would have dinner with his family. And Bob tells Father Mark, hey, Father, would you like to come to my home for dinner? And Father Mark says, why not? Okay, whatever. So I'm in the car driving to I'm driving to my friend Bob's house, and all of a sudden I get a text from my friend, and he says, Ted, who's Nick? Who? I don't know. And Bob says, well, it looks like Father Mark accidentally texted me, and he meant for this text to go to some guy named Nick, and he said, hey, Nick, dinner at Bob's place, and I never invited his friend Nick to come over. So this priest was inviting his friend over to Bob's house without even letting Bob know without even getting Bob's permission. He just sent this text out to his friend Nick saying, "Hey, dinner at Bob's place." It was really, really strange. And I go to Bob's house, and there's Bob and there's his wife. And then there's a knock on the door. And Bob opens up the door, and there's Father Mark, and there is another guy. We never invited this other guy over. And this guy, his name was Nick. Nick was a scary looking guy. He was very, very tall. He had big, big arms, big fingers. He was a very intimidating guy. He looked like the type of guy you wouldn't want sitting behind you in a car, because he would be the guy to kill you. He looked like that type of a guy. He had very, very dark eyes. He was a very creepy looking person, and when you were around him, you got the sense that you were in the presence of darkness and evil. So there's this Nick guy, and there's Father Mark, and it's a very awkward atmosphere in the house, because there's this guy who was never invited, who we don't even know who this person is. And there he is. And Nick told us that he had just recently got a divorce, and that he was living with Father Mark. And then, as Nick is telling us this story, Father Mark is sitting there with his shoulders shrugged down, looking very much like a weakling. And Father Mark says, Nick cooks for me. It was very strange. So I said, Father Mark, whatever happened about that Italian girl? What's the update on that? I gave you my photo, I gave you my age. Did you talk to this girl? Did you talk to her family? What's the update? What's up with that? What happened? And Father Mark looks at me, and he gives me this smirk, and he says, "Oh, Theodore, leave the Italians alone. They'll be fine." And I said, Father Mark, I gave you my photo, and I gave you my age. What happened with that family? Did you speak to them at all? And he said, Theodore, leave the Italians alone. They'll be fine. Okay. It was weird. But nonetheless, it still didn't register into my mind that something wrong was happening. But these were red flags that I should have paid attention to. So Father Mark spoke to me about going to Rome. And Father Mark was someone who was very well connected in Italy. He told me about how he had all these friends in Italy, how he was connected to a cardinal, if I remember correctly, how he had all these friends in Italy. And he talked about how I should go to Italy and meet with him, and that he would connect me with all of these young Catholics and Catholic people, and how it would just be a great experience of Catholic fellowship. So I thought, yeah, why not? I mean, go to Italy, meet a bunch of fellow Catholics. It'll be fun. It'll be a great time. Fellowshipping is there's a lot of good things that come from fellowshipping. There's a lot of fun in fellowshipping. There's a lot of enjoyment in speaking about your faith with others, especially young people. Young people who have a common interest with you. There's a lot of joy in that experience. And so I thought, why not? And Father Mark has a lot of connections. He knows a lot of people there. So if I go to Italy with Father Mark, I wouldn't be stranded, because it's really a terrible idea to go to a country by yourself where you don't know anyone. So I thought, well, Father Mark could be my bridge into Italy. So I spoke about it with my father, and he said, no, it's not a good idea. Don't go to Italy. And I thought, well, Father Mark will be there. Nothing's going to happen to me. And he said, you're going to a country where you don't know anyone, and it's dangerous. At that time, I was very idealistic, and I really wanted to go to Italy because in my mind, Italy was something very special because of its rich history in the history of Christianity. And I idealized Italy. It's kind of like what a Muslim does with Saudi Arabia. And then they go to Saudi Arabia and it's like, oh, this place is a giant cesspool. So my father forbade me from going, but I was adamant about going to Italy. And I was very naive, and I was very credulous, idealistic, and frankly stupid. So I spoke with Father Mark, and I said, "Hey, I would like to go to Italy. What does it take? What's the agenda? What's the procedure? What's the protocol?" And he said, "Well, I fly to Italy at this month, yada yada yada." And he says, the cost of a ticket would be this much, but it's cheaper if you fly at this time. You fly through this airline, whatever. I said, okay, fine. So one day I give him a call and I say, could you give me some more details on the trip to Italy and things that would be required and things like that? Because at this point, I had never been to Europe. And I was completely clueless. And so he told me some more information, and then we started to discuss theology. And at that time, I was very much so active in fighting Sodom and in fighting the homosexual movement. And we started talking about that. And he told me something that I did not expect him to say. He said to me, Theodore, and this is what he said. This is going to be graphic. It's going to be gross, but this is what this guy said. He said, Theodore, two men can masturbate each other, and it's not a mortal sin. What? I said, well, wouldn't they have to go to confession and all that stuff? And he said, no, they wouldn't have to go to confession. It's not a mortal sin. And he even told me that St. Thomas Aquinas said that it's not a sin. I had never heard this in my life. I was completely shocked, and I had this horrible feeling of being very disturbed. And I said, well, that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong what you're saying, Father Mark. And he said, oh, Theodore, that's your opinion. Well, you have a good day. And the conversation ended. About 15 minutes later, I get an email from Father Mark, and he says, Theodore, if you are going to ask me questions, do not ask me questions if you are not going to like my answer. If you want to give me your opinions, keep them to yourself. That's what this guy told me. And there is there's a big detail about that phone conversation that we had. Before the issue of homosexuality came up, we were talking about the traveling agenda. And he said, Theodore, we should share a room together. And I said, what? He said, yeah, we should share a room together. And I said, nah, I just, obviously I didn't feel comfortable with that. And he said, well, it would be very economical, and we would save a lot of money. It was very, very disturbing to hear this. And then he said those things about homosexuality and how it's not a sin, and it was so disturbing. It's difficult for me to even give you guys these details because it was a very disturbing experience. To hear this from someone who you thought was good, or who you thought was righteous, or who you thought was someone that was going to help lead you through the path of Catholicism and all that stuff. It was a horrific experience. It was at this moment that I realized why he asked me for my photograph and my age. He didn't ask me for those things so that he could introduce me to some nice Italian Catholic family. He wanted my photograph so he could show it to his weird friends. And he wanted my age so that he could make sure that preying on me would be legal. That's really what that was about. My palms are sweating just telling you guys this story. And then I did some more investigation into him, and I found out that he covered up for another priest who was a predator who preyed on young boys. So that's one story. And there's another story that I want to tell you guys. So I had always wanted to go to Italy. I had always wanted to see the Vatican, to see the monuments of Christian history. To me, it would be a beautiful experience. So late last year, I finally went to Rome. I finally went to Italy. Now, how did I finally come to the decision to go to Italy? Well, I got a phone call from my aunt, and she said that she was going to take a trip with my cousin and a few of my other aunts to go to Italy, and she was asking if I wanted to tag along. So I said, why not? Really, why not? So I go to Italy. This was in September of last year. And 3 of my aunts who are with me, I had 5 of my aunts who were with me. I have a lot of aunts. I had 5 of my aunts who were with me, and 3 of them were nuns. 3 of them are nuns, I should say, because they're still nuns. And part of the trip was that we were going to see a lot of churches. We were going to see St. Peter's Basilica. We were going to travel around northern Italy and see various churches and shrines. And we were going to meet a lot of Catholics. So, sounded like a great idea. So I went to Italy. This was in September of last year. And the plan was that I was going to stay in Italy for about 3 weeks. So we go to Italy. I land in Rome, and I meet with my family there, my relatives. And we stay in Rome for about 3 or 4 days. We saw St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square. We saw all that stuff. So then, one of my aunts tells me, tomorrow we're going to be going to a village called Pietrarubia, which is in northern Italy. And we are going to be staying in the premises of a church and a monastery. And a couple of the people from the church are going to pick us up. So, okay, why not? Sounds like a great idea. So the next morning, we get up, and they are 2 men from the monastery, and they are 2 monks, and they are there to drive us all the way from Rome to Pietrarubia, which is in the region of Italy called Emilia-Romagna, which is up north in Italy, northern Italy. So I get in the car, and there is this monk, and he's going to drive us to the village. And it was about a 2 hour and a half long drive, maybe even longer. It was quite a road trip. And it was cool because you could see the countryside of Italy and all that, and the farmlands. It was actually quite serene. So there's this monk, and he's driving us, and let's just say his name is Victor. So Victor the monk is talking to us, and we're talking about theology. So I asked Victor a question, a very simple question. I said, so what made you join the monastery? What inspired you to, take up this vocation of being a monk? So he says to me, I like your question. I like how you asked the question. It shows me that you have a very profound connection with God, a profound relationship with God. And I'm like, you don't even know me. We literally just met. And why would you say that? Like, I understand if if you've known someone for years and you say, hey, you know what, you have a really good relationship with God. I understand that. You've known this person for years, but you've literally just met me. And now we're in the car driving to some village, and I ask a simple question, a simple question that a lot of people would ask. What got you into the monastery? And you say, oh, I really like your question. It shows me that you have this profound relationship with the Lord. That was a red flag. And at this point, I'm not naive. I had gone through, weird experiences in the Catholic Church with priests who were predators before. So when I was given this statement, when I was told this by this monk, it automatically just triggered this red flag, this light bulb in my mind. And my spidey senses went up, and I was like, there's something wrong with this dude. Be careful with people who overcompliment you when you first meet them. Be careful with people who overcompliment you when you first meet them. There is a film that I saw a couple of days ago, and I'm not changing the subject, this is absolutely related to the story. There is a film that I saw a few days ago. It's called Creep. Now, the title is quite self-explanatory. The film is creepy, and I would not recommend it to you if you do not like watching disturbing movies. But the film came out in 2014, and without spoiling it too much for you guys, the film is about a predator. It's about a predator who was preying on a man, and he is trying to kill this man. He wants to kill this man, but before he kills him, he wants to gain the man's trust to the point that he could get him off guard and essentially stab him in the back and murder him. It's the story of a serial killer. And in the movie, in most of the movie, it's the predator, the serial killer, trying to get the victim, the prey, off guard, and to get the victim to trust the predator. And throughout the film, the predator is over-complimenting this man. For example, in several parts of the film, the predator says to the man, I can tell you're a good person. When this guy doesn't even know this person. He just met him. The film, even though it's very disturbing, it accurately portrays the strategies of a predator. There is also a video that you can watch from the 1950s, and this video was made to warn people about the ways and methods and strategies of men who prey on young men or prey on young boys. And the narrator in the film says, be careful with people who try to gain your confidence too quickly. And again, this video was warning about predators, and it was teaching how to spot a predator. So when I'm in the car with this monk and this person is like, oh, I really love your question, and it shows me how profound your relationship with God is, when he doesn't even know me, that automatically sent a message into my mind that this person was dangerous. He should not be trusted. So we get to the village, and it's pretty normal, right? Nothing unusual. The village was kind of creepy. It looked like something from Resident Evil 4. But nonetheless, nothing really unusual. The choir music, the monastic singing in this church was very profound and very beautiful. The Mass was very beautiful. It was traditional Latin Mass. And it was overall a really good experience, actually. But back to this monk, there was something very strange about him. And I remember I was in the car with him one night. We were driving from Assisi. And it was around 9-something p.m. We were driving back to the village. And he begins to tell me about his favorite music. And he begins to tell me about how his favorite song is Bohemian Rhapsody. It's just weird. it's just weird that a monk would listen to this type of music. And he told me that his favorite movie is on the life of the band that sung Bohemian Rhapsody. And he even told me, and I did not ask him about this, he even told me, you know, the film does have some homosexual stuff in it, but still, you know, it's a great movie. And I'm like, this is weird. This is very, very weird. And you know, there were times where we would be walking through a town and this monk would start dancing like he was in a nightclub. And it was freaking weird. It was very weird. It was just very, very bizarre. And in my last couple of nights in the village, you know, I began to become very wary of the whole thing. I did not feel comfortable with this person at all. Thankfully, I had my own room. I wasn't, you know, hanging out with other people in the room. I had my own room. I had my own privacy. But I remember one night we were having dinner, and this was the night before I left the village and went back to Rome. And I remember I was eating dinner, and this monk was sitting right next to me here. And you know, when we talk, we move our hands, right? It's very normal. So I'm talking with other people and moving my hands. And I move, and he's sitting here, and I move my hand this way. And his face is like over here, right? Here's his face. He does this. He goes, ah. Like this damn near close to biting my hand. This damn near close to biting my finger. Like a psychopath. It's like, ah. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And it was right there where all of my fears, all of my concerns, all of the red flags that were going on in my head were confirmed true. This person is a predator. He's a sicko. And I remember I was in the monastery dining hall. And again, I was talking to other people and I was being very social. And he walks up to me and he says, "Would you like to dance with me?" I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I look at him and I said, I would like to dance with a woman. I don't dance with men. And he just looked at me like, with this crappy look on his face. And that was it. I turned around and walked away. And it was just a really creepy experience. The whole thing was creepy. And the group that I was with, frankly, was creepy. I mean, their music was nice and everything, but they were creepy. It turned out that the lady who was running it, her name is Sister Gloria Riva. Turns out that she is involved in Kabbalism. I wrote a whole article exposing her. I will put the article in the description for you to read on my experience in Rome, my strange experience in Rome. But yeah, the Catholic Church is a very weird place. It's a very bizarre place. And it really is that bad out there. It really is that bad in the Catholic Church. It's horrendous. Now, in my last video that I did on this subject, I talked about 3 priests. And 2 of those priests were Father Kinsel, and I talked about Father Yarbrough. And both of these priests were evil. Yarbrough was a predator. He preyed on me. Kinsel was a priest who covered up for a pedophile. And I met both of these priests within 2 years. I met Kinsel in 2013, and I met Mr. Yarbrough in 2014. I converted to Catholicism in 2013. So within 2 years of me converting, I had encountered 2 predator priests. That's literally how bad it is. That someone could convert, a young man could convert to Catholicism, and within 2 years, he is encountering 2 priests who are evil, who are predatorial, and who are just purely demonic people. It just, that right there shows you how bad it is. It's horrific. Um, yeah, and they talk about this crisis in the church. They say, you know, how can we get more young men to join the priesthood? You're not going to. You know why? That's the reason. Because there are too many predators in the seminaries, and there are too many predators in the Catholic Church. You cannot even trust your kids with priests. That's the bottom line. And the Catholic Church has been so reduced and so utterly decayed that it has become something closer to, honestly, a giant gay club. Now, I still hold on to the dogma of the Catholic Church. I still hold on to the history of the Catholic Church. I think there's a lot of beautiful history. But the Catholic Church in its current state has honestly become Sodom. Anyway, those are some more of my strange encounters within the Catholic Church. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.